Welcome back. This is Rice and Beans. We're here in 2019. This is the first episode of the year, so thanks for tuning back in. We didn't scare you off. I'm here today with Morgan O'May. Morgan O'May, say hi, please.
Hi.
So, what is your ethnocultural identity?
So I am Korean and Japanese American, but I'm also fourth generation American born. So, like, my family immigrated to the States a long time ago.
Okay.
Which I think is interesting because a lot of my friends are Asian American. A lot of them, their parents just immigrated here, or maybe they were born abroad and then they moved here when they were pretty young. But yeah, I'm from California as well, which has a pretty big Japanese American population as well.
So let's talk about that a little bit. So you were never in contact with any of the relatives that were born and raised in Japan or Korea?
So on my mom's side of the family, my grandmother, so my mom's mom, was actually born in Tokyo, and she met my grandfather when he was studying abroad. So my grandmother's actually an immigrant, but on my mom's dad's side of the family, they have like immigrated here from a long time ago.
Okay.
And they had a general store like in Sacramento and worked in agriculture and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Which a lot of Japanese immigrants did when they first came to the States on the West Coast. And so I visited some of my family in Japan, like on my mom's side of the family. Like my grandma, she goes back to visit her siblings, and she has like a lot of family there, but I'm not super in touch with my roots there. And then on my dad's side of the family, yeah, I've never been to Korea. I don't know any Korean relatives. And my dad actually grew up in Hawaii, and his mom was adopted, so...
Oh, I see. So there's another source of disconnect, I guess.
Yeah.
So you said that your grandmother is Japanese, like from, where was it? Kyoto?
Tokyo.
Tokyo. Okay. So did she raise your mother with the sort of Japanese culture? Or was it more along the lines of trying to adapt to American culture once she was here?
Well, my mom and my uncle, they both like went to Japanese school growing up, and I think because my grandfather was American born and my grandmother was born in Japan, they wanted my mom and her brother to speak English and like be connected to American culture, but they also like, I guess they were raised in like a bilingual household as well. So yeah, I don't know. My grandma was really young when she first came here. She was only 23, and she didn't really know English too well because she took it in high school, but you know, she grew up in Japan, so she didn't speak it fluently yet.
I see. So when you brought up Japanese school, what is Japanese school?
It's like a lot of kids go to language school when they're little, and you just like learn how to read and write when you're a kid.
So it's purely language?
Yeah, it's like an after school kind of thing. I didn't go to it, so, but I know a lot of my friends, like, they went to Chinese school or other kinds of language schools, French school.
Do you think what is your opinion on those schools, and not just propagating the language, but also that maybe not the Japanese school that your mom went to, but propagating the culture itself, serving as like a beacon?
Yeah, I think that they're really important, and I kind of wish that I'd gone to one when I was a kid, because like you learn about like the history and culture of the country as well. And I think it's like especially interesting with Japanese Americans because during World War II, you know, over 100,000 Japanese Americans were interned, and so there was for a lot of people there was like this desire to kind of reject Japanese culture to prove that they were American and that they were loyal to the government. So I think it's really important to like also be connected to your Japanese history. When I was in high school, I got to go to Japan with some other, like 4 other Japanese American US kids. And it was a trip sponsored by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. And the reason why they do this trip is because they realize that a lot of like later generation Japanese American kids, they don't know anything about Japan, but they're really connected to like Japanese American history. So they're trying to like bridge that gap, which I think is interesting because like a lot of times there is a connection between like people born in Japan and Japanese Americans, but I feel like because of the internment experience, it's really been like difficult for that connection to remain.
Yeah, that whole internment thing is like one of those blemishes in U.S. history where the government feels somewhat responsible for, and I guess this would be a way that they would try to make up for it, I guess. A sort of, I don't want to use this word, but I'm going to do it anyway, affirmative action.
Well, so the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is in Japan.
Oh, so, okay, so it's the Japanese government.
Yeah, and also, like, I wouldn't call it affirmative action, but like in the 80s, Congress passed an act which did give reparations to those who had been interned because it was like a clear violation of their rights, and later they like acknowledged that it was that it wasn't right for them to do that at the time. So the like surviving people who had been interned, they were paid like a small amount of money.
Okay, all right, that's good. So at family gatherings, for on either your mom's or your dad's side, are people all speaking English and just sort of doing what one would expect an American to do?
Yeah, so my family now is like pretty small. It's usually my mom, my dad, my grandma and me, and then maybe like some of my mom's cousins at family dinners. My grandmother speaks English to me because I don't understand Japanese. Everyone speaks English. And then I think what's interesting is at Thanksgiving we have, regular like turkey, we have sweet potatoes, green beans, and then we have like rice, like Japanese rice and gravy. And then we also have this like cranberry jello dish that my great-grandmother, she like made that recipe. So we have a lot of like family recipes. And then my grandma will usually make this dish called inari, which is like sushi rice with vinegar, and it's like stuffed into tofu skins. It's really good. And then my grandma also makes spam musubi. And spam is really interesting because it's like a lot of Asian Americans love it, and it's really interesting because especially for Japanese Americans, like the reason why a lot of us eat spam is because that was what you were able to eat in the internment camps, or if you were like living in Hawaii, like that was what was available because there's not a lot of fresh food. But now it's like become like one of our like, I guess, cultural staples, and it's really delicious. But it is really interesting how like history informs like the food that we eat.
Spam just seems very symbolic in that respect. I've definitely heard of this spam musubi before, and I guess I'm proud to say that I eat spam like at least once a week. So.
It's really bad for you, but it tastes so good.
I agree completely. Some people might not agree, and that's okay. Everyone's subject to their own opinion. So let's see, moving on a little bit forward. So have you ever thought about whether or not, if you have children, whether you will make an attempt to sort of educate them on the cultural upbringing that you missed out on? So sending them to Japanese school, for example.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like my parents like let me pick whatever language I wanted to study. So in middle school I took Japanese, but it wasn't very rigorous. That was like one of the languages that my middle school offered. And then when I went to high school, I took Latin and Italian because that's what I wanted to study. I don't know if I would like encourage or force my kids to take Japanese or Korean, mainly because I don't know it. But I do sometimes wish that I stuck with it. I tried to take Japanese in college, and it was really hard. So I feel like unless there's like a real incentive to study it, like you're going to live there, or I really wanted to learn Japanese to speak with my grandma, but my grandma speaks English, so it's like there's not a real reason to do it. I feel like I will encourage them if they want to, but I wouldn't force it.
Yeah, so one of the big things that we encounter through Windows, through Rice and Beans, is that there's this whole acculturation pressure versus cultural preservation, in that people are trying to maintain their cultural identity from where their parents or they came from or their grandparents came from, but at the same time, this pressure from the country that they're living in to conform to what their norms are. So it seems like so one of the pressures would be, for example, being able to communicate with relatives that do not speak English, but that doesn't seem like a problem for you.
No, I think it's because I'm fourth generation American born. I know like if I had relatives in Japan or Korea, like there would be more. I would feel like there's more of a reason to be learning the language.
Yeah.
Do you speak French, right?
Mm-hmm.
You speak and Spanish? And do any of your relatives speak Spanish?
Yeah, like most of them. I'm Colombian.
That's so cool. So did you grow up speaking Spanish at home as well?
Yeah, I did. I was fortunate to do that. So it was just kind of natural. It wasn't necessarily, there wasn't really a reason to learn it, which is what I'm getting at. Do you ever get like mistaken on the streets for someone, for like, do people come up to you and say Hangu?
No, but they do say ni hao a lot. It's so funny. I mean, it's not really that funny, but sometimes I'll say back to them like, oh, hi, or oh, hello, and then they'll be like, oh, konnichiwa, or they'll just try it in different languages, and I'm like, I don't know why you do that.
Is this people like around here, or is it people if you were to go to Japan?
Oh, no, it's
like,
in Baltimore.
Is it like jokingly?
In Baltimore?
Mm-hmm.
No, they just like think I'm a foreigner.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, when I've been in Japan, I feel like I look American, like just the way I dress and stuff like that. So I think people know I'm not from Japan. The other thing is, if they do speak to me in Japanese, like I'll just tell them like, oh, I only speak English. But in America, it's like I get ni hao all the time. It can be really frustrating, and sometimes I try to tell the person like, oh, actually, like I'm not Chinese, and I actually don't speak I only speak Italian. And then they don't really get it, so yeah.
So where are you from?
I'm from San Francisco.
San Francisco?
Yeah.
So what's San Francisco like for those viewers or those listeners at home who've never been there or have heard of it?
So it's a city on the West Coast in California, and it's pretty diverse, although I think because of the tech boom, it's becoming a lot more crowded, and I think because of that, communities of color are being pushed out. There are a lot of Asian Americans in the Bay Area, though, so growing up, like, I never had people ask me, you know, what are you, or where are you really from? I didn't really get that much. But when I came to the East Coast, I got all the time. So it was definitely like eye-opening for me. I also think what's interesting is on the West Coast, there definitely are more American-born Asian Americans. On the East Coast, I feel like they're more like first-generation or foreign-born.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Why do you think that is?
I have no idea.
Because I would expect the opposite, because it's like closer to East Asia.
Yeah, I do think though that when immigration first started coming, like from Asia to the U.S., everyone came through the West Coast, and that's why there are more American-born on the West Coast. I don't know why. Like maybe people just decide to stay there because there are like strong communities. But I was surprised that like there definitely are more American-borns on the West Coast. Something I just took for granted growing up, too.
Yeah, I see. So the sense of community, are there like little communities or like little neighborhood type areas that are just sort of ethnically homogenous?
In the Bay Area?
Yeah.
Yeah, we have, there's a Chinatown and a Japantown in San Francisco. And LA as well, and there's a little Korea, I think, as well. I'm not really sure though. But a lot for the Japantown, it was how do I put this? During the war, it was pretty much vacated because everyone had to leave to go to the internment camps. So because of that, it's not as strong as it once was, even though it's been like 70-something years. Because everyone had to move out, and then new people came in.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is there any way that you enjoy your Japanese or Korean cultural heritage to this day?
Well, I really love doing tea ceremony with my grandma.
Oh yeah.
It's really it's really difficult because you have to learn exactly how to pour the tea, hold the tea bowl, serve the tea, but it is a really like meditative practice, and my grandma has studied it her whole life now, and she's in her 80s. So I really like doing that with her, or cooking. I feel like most people connect with their heritage via food anyways.
Yeah, that's why this is called Rice and
Yeah.
Beans.
So I really like cooking with my grandma, and my grandma on my dad's side, she passed away a few years ago, but she would always make Korean food for me when I went to visit her in Hawaii. And one thing that I really liked that she made kimchi and ham omelets.
Wow.
Yeah. So kind of one of those like mixed culture foods.
Yeah.
But it was so good. And another dish she would make was this like cold radish noodle soup, and it took 3 days to prepare.
Wow.
I just feel like now I don't know if I would spend 3 days making one dish. I don't think I know how to, and I don't think I would put the time in. So, yeah.
Do you think it was worth it though? Does it make a difference in flavor or something?
Yeah. Because you have to let the like flavors ferment and stuff.
Oh yes, classic.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one day you'll say, you know what, I kind of miss that cold radish soup, and spend 3 days getting it ready.
Yeah, my dad tried to make it, and it didn't taste as good. So I feel like it was like a special thing. It was like my grandma must have put something special in there to make it taste good. Or it was just because it was her. Yeah.
That could be it too.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for being on this episode of Rice and Beans. This has been the first episode of 2019, Rice and Beans. We're back, bitches. And thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Don't forget to check out the music recommendations in the weekly playlist. Yeah, that's right, it's updated. We got tons of fun music and tunes and tracks and jams to check out. And don't forget that to-go box has all, like around 500 now songs we've ever played on Rice and Beans. So have a great week.